lesson will be about. Today's lesson is going to be about emotions. Now, we all start with a primary set, and as we grow older, we acquire more of them. When your emotions control your actions, it affects not only yourself, but the people around you. This will help to know. Emotions are centered in the lower part of the brain. It is complicated, yes, but mysterious no longer. Emotional behavior is largely involuntary. I can't believe that. We have certain basic emotions which are controlled subconsciously. Notice your own emotional reactions. What did you feel? What did you do? Under control, your emotions can make you healthier and happier and improve the lives of people around you. This is pretty clever. That's a rather simplified suggestion of a complex mental process, but you get the idea.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. Hey, good to see all of you guys here. If you want to follow along with the sermon notes, it's in the back over there. Let's do a series review really quickly because we are going to go over, we have been going over emotions and we will continue to go over it today. So, what are the two views of dealing with emotions? First one is to stuff your emotions, okay, to ignore it or to repress it. Okay, that's kind of like the secular view, or not the secular view, kind of like the religious view or like the old traditional view, right? They think that emotions are bad. Okay, stuff them as much as you can. If you have anger within you, get rid of it. If you have doubt within you, get rid of it. Don't bring it to church. These kind of ideas, okay? The other way we do it is totally the opposite way, where we say you ventilate it. You vent your anger as much as you want. Okay? The problem that you have in your life, okay, you have psychological problems, okay, you have emotional problems, it's because you're not expressing your emotions enough. So, follow your emotions, let emotions be basically your master. So we have two different views where people tell us either stuff your emotions or express them. And let that be your master. And we said both of these views can be very, very dangerous. Instead, the Bible teaches us a third way. Okay? What is the third way? The third way is to pray your emotions. Okay? It's not praying about your emotions, it's different. But pray your emotions. Praying about your emotions is you come to God and you say, God, I feel this way, bye. And that's it. But praying about your emotions, it's to lay down your emotions and to process them, to talk to God about the emotions, but also to process these emotions in the presence of God. So we talked about fear. We talked about anxiety. We talked about shame. We talked about guilt. We talked about doubt. Today, we're going to be talking about anger. Okay, how do we deal with anger? How do we actually pray our anger? Now, if you were listening to Spencer carefully, you're going to see that this psalm is not preached very much in the church. Actually, the front part of it is actually very well known, but the last part, especially when it gets down to that, especially Christians, get really, really, really uncomfortable. Did you guys listen carefully to what Spencer said? All right, let's see it. It actually says this: blessed, or his version, it said, happy is he who takes your little ones and dash them against the rock. Okay. So again, you see something like this and you go, whoa, wait, hold on. That's in the Bible? Wait, that's not supposed to be in the Bible? This is a holy man. This is a person who's close to God. Why is he so angry? He's so angry, he's saying, I wish I could take one of those Babylonians' kids and dash them to the rock. And again, Christians look at this and we go, whoa. Anger, whoa. We can't deal with anger. Anger is not good. Anger is bad. Anger is dangerous. We need to avoid anger at all cost. Okay? But we see here, he expresses anger. Okay? So one of the things we have to understand, and if you got nothing from this emotion series, one thing you should realize is, okay, number one, when we are praying, the problem, as we're going over Psalms together, it's not that we're too emotional. The problem is that we're not emotional enough in our prayers. Okay, the problem is we're not bringing these things to God. And that's why so many of us have emotional issues. The second thing is, and I talked about this before, is listen, Christianity, and this is how you see Christianity really, really. I know some of you guys go, Christianity is so irrelevant. But you see, this is why Christianity is so relevant in our lives. Why? Because it doesn't hide anger. It doesn't hide shame. It doesn't hide fear. It actually addresses them. Why? Because life, as you guys know, and as I know, there's a lot of different scenarios where it's frustrating, and there's times where you get annoyed, times you get, sad, there's times you cry, and there's times you get really, really angry, so angry that you want to grab a kid and smash them. Again, okay, that sounds pretty bad, but again, there's times, especially parents, you feel that way. Okay, so it's very real, it's very raw, but you see, this is what the Bible is presenting. That, hey, this is life. Life is hard, it's not easy. It's not just this, let's have religion and peace, 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 peace. But despite you believing in Christianity, man, life gets hard. Okay? So what do we do about anger? There's three things we're going to talk about in Psalms 37. First one is, why is this guy so angry? Number two is, what's the definition of anger? How do we actually deal with it? And number three, how do we actually pray our anger? Number one, if you look at your notes, there's three different reasons why he's really angry. Number one, we see basically he's an Israelite, but what happened? This is a real historical event where the Babylonians actually came in. Babylonians, the bigger country. Israelites, very, very small country. And what do? The big country comes in and then basically seizes, takes over, destroys, levels, and the soldiers come in, they pillage, they destroy, they kill. And so he's actually giving an eyewitness account of what happened and what kind of atrocities that he has endured as an Israelite. What happened? He sees his little ones being taken out of his hand and being dashed. Okay? He knows, after all the killing, all the destroying, what did they do? Like Daniel, you guys heard the story of Daniel? What happens? The rich, the smart, the educated, what happens to them? They don't kill them. They take them with them and make them into slaves. And he's one of them. He's one of the eyewitnesses that goes through this. So that's number one. Reason number two says right here, for our captors required us songs, our tormentors, saying, sing us one of those songs of Zion. What are they doing? The Babylonians, as they're taking them, what are they doing? They're tormenting them, but not, how are they tormenting them? They're basically saying, hey, sing your songs. Dance for us. Sing for us. Where is your great song of Zion now? It's like kind of like saying, hey, we destroyed you. Why don't you sing your anthem song? What are they doing? They're mocking them. They're ridiculing them, saying, hey, sing your anthem song now. It gets worse. Another reason right here, remember, O Lord, against the Edomites. Edomites are the neighboring country of the Israelites. The days of Jerusalem, how they say, lay it bare down to its foundation. So as the Babylonians are attacking them, destroying them, pillaging them, the Edomites are saying, all right, lay it bare. Destroy everything, Babylonian. This is awesome. You are getting rid of our enemy. So again, they're being mocked. So not only are their lives totally, totally destroyed, the people who have captured them, their enemies, are making fun of them, and so are their neighboring countries. And that's why this guy is so angry. All right, let's go to the definition of anger. Once again, we look at some of this and we go, oh man, this guy is so angry. He needs to get some counseling. He must not be a good Christian. He must not have good faith, and these kind of concepts. But actually, this is actually a wrong concept that we have as Christians. Not everybody, but I think most of the people, which includes myself a lot, I think I really, really believed this before I started studying, which is anger is bad. Or anger is sinful. But actually, if you look at the Bible and actually look through all the verses where it talks about anger, there's no trace of that. The Bible does talk about how you deal with your anger, it can become very dangerous. How you deal with your anger, it can become very bad. How you deal with the anger, it can become very sinful. But anger itself, you feeling anger, it's not a bad thing. It's an emotion that comes out, okay? So let's look at, if you look at the note, so let me just say this, okay? So again, once again, all emotions, I would actually say, yeah, all emotions are not bad. They're all neutral, okay? They could be good, or they could be used for good. They could be used for bad, okay? So emotions are not bad when they're, emotions become bad when they're dealt with it badly. Okay, so emotions are not bad, but emotions become bad, okay, when it's dealt with badly. Okay, emotions that are dealt badly, they can become dangerous, and they can become sinful as well. Okay, let me give you some examples of this anger. Okay, this good anger, how anger actually could be used for good. Do you guys know that Jesus became angry quite a bit? Okay, again, Christians, we look at that, we go, I don't like it, skip. Oh, loving part. Yes, Jesus loving, peace, nice. But no, there's many cases where Jesus actually gets really, 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 really angry. Okay, let's look at one. Oh, before that, I'll give you a definition of anger. Okay? Anger is energy. Anger is energy triggered in defense of something good, okay, and released against something evil. Okay, so anger comes when something that you want to protect, something that is good, and sometimes it is something bad too, but you see, it's an energy that comes out when you love something, when you want to protect something good, and now you need to release that energy against something that is evil. Okay? So keep in mind this definition as, and I'm going to explain it more. Okay? But think about this definition as we go to Jesus' story. Okay? So we see Jesus' story. Okay? He's talking with the Pharisee. This is on the Sabbath, and Jesus looks around at the Pharisees with anger. Okay? Jesus becomes angry again. Christians, if you believe anger is bad, anger is no. Jesus gets angry. He grieves at the hardness of heart and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. Okay, let me give you context. So what happened? Okay, Jesus sees someone who has he has shriveled hands, so he cannot use his hands. But the Pharisees, they're looking at Jesus and they want to, put something on the tabloid and say, "Oh, Jesus is not a good prophet." But Jesus comes and he basically says, "Look, you guys made all of these rules on the Sabbath and made this into a who's better at keeping these laws to make sure I'm a better Christian or I'm not a better Christian, the self-righteousness, you have made this into a game." So he actually asked them, is it unlawful to heal on the Sabbath? But the Pharisees, they say nothing. Why? Because inside they know that Sabbath is for restoration. But for them, they have rules against these things. They have man-made rules they have created. And now they're saying, and Jesus becomes so angry. Why? He becomes angry at the error. He becomes angry at pride. He becomes angry that these people, these religious leaders, are turning something good that's supposed to be meant for good into something that is bad. Okay, so again, let's look at our definition. Our definition is anger is an energy that is triggered, right, in the defense of something good. What is good? Sabbath. The law of Sabbath is a great thing. Why? Because God has created it for us as refreshment. He has given us this so that we can have balance in our lives between work and rest. Because again, we have problems with that, right? But again, he gives us something beautiful. He defends it, and then he lashes out his energy, okay, to heal this person. Why? Because the fact that he's unhealed, there's a disease. There's an error. Okay? So in Jesus' anger, he actually heals. Okay? He uses the energy, and then he lashes it out on the evil. Okay? The problem becomes, a lot of times for us, the problem is a lot of times we get angry at the wrong things and then we lash it on something that's good. Okay? Best example of this, okay, is we do this all the time with people that we love, especially our spouses. This happens quite a bit, right? Something didn't go right. You're not happy with something. Okay, you come home and you expect your wife or your husband to say, "Oh, good job, honey. Like you're doing such a good job." Right? "Oh, you had a long day at work." And you expect like a nice dinner. But you come home and she might be sleeping or he might be sleeping or she might be playing games, something like, I don't know, something like that, right? And you come in, right? And then what happens now, all of a sudden, because of your expectations, you become angry at your kids, you lash out on them. Or maybe you had a bad day at work because of your boss. What happens? You come home and you lash it against your wife, your kids. And this is when anger becomes sin. It becomes very dangerous. Why? Because we're not identifying why we're angry. A lot of times we're angry for bad reason. And we're lashing it out on good things, whereas it's reverse. We need to be angry about evil things. And then we need to unleash that. We need to be in defense. We need to be angry in defense of the good and then release that on the evil. Okay? So Jesus gives an example of this in the Bible. I'll talk about this a little bit more. All right. So summary, okay, it's always wrong to suppress your anger. Okay? Because I'll give you another verse. Paul actually says, be angry. Okay? You need to become angry. The problem that we have sometimes is we don't become angry enough. Okay, do you guys know that it's in the Bible? Okay. Be angry, but do not sin. You see, we need to be angry, but in a correct way. Like I talked about, okay, I'll give you some examples of how we can sin. But be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. And he gives some example of how anger actually becomes sin. Okay? He gives an example of this in verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath, anger, clamor, slander, and be put away from you among all malice. So basically what happens is, a lot of time we have anger. Maybe someone has offended us or someone has wronged us. But what happens? Because of that energy, we place that energy in wrong places. Okay, he gives two examples. The first example is wrath and anger. So what do? You put that energy out on people who have nothing to do with the anger. So what do? Sometimes you yell at your kids. You explode outside. Okay, but sometimes you explode it inside. So what do? Some of you guys with anger because you say, "Oh, I have been an angry person before, and that had made my wife or my husband or my kids really mad. So now I just need to suppress my anger." But the problem is because anger creates energy, what happens? It just explodes inside of you. Okay, so what do you start doing? You start gossiping. Okay, you start becoming really bitter. Okay, why is that? Why? Because you're not exploring, you're not using this correct energy that you might have into something good. And that's why even if you start off with good anger, if you use it in a bad way or if you direct it in a wrong way, it can become very, very harmful. Okay? And so we need to recognize, again, why is it that I have this anger? Okay, is this good anger? Is it good for me to have this anger? Did someone really hurt me? We need to explore this instead of repressing it. So, if you look at the summary, it says it's always wrong to repress your anger, and it's often a sin to be unable or willing to get angry. Okay? Because there's times where we actually need to get angry at the right things, and sometimes we don't. For example, the fact that Jesus got angry when he saw injustice. There's another story. Remember how Jesus goes into the temple and he grabs a whip and he gets very, very angry. Okay, again, why is he getting angry? He's getting angry because the temple was a place of worship. A temple was where people get to meet God. And what happened? The religious leaders, they made that into a marketplace. They made that into a shopping mall. It's like, hey, you want a good deal? Get some money? Again, Jesus gets angry at injustice when he sees that because people are taking advantage of the poor. We talked about this last week. Okay? If there's certain things that we're not getting angry about, that God gets angry at, then what does that tell us about our knowledge of God? We think we might know God, but if we're not getting angry at the things that God is being angry at, we don't know God. Okay? Last week we talked about how God cares about the poor, the people who are getting oppressed. Okay? And if we don't get angry at that, if we just go, whatever, and walk away, then again, we don't know the heart of God. We're not getting angry at the right things. So the Bible actually tells us, instead of repressing your anger, actually, go into it, dive into your anger. And that's why it doesn't say don't get angry, but in James it actually says slow to anger. Why? Because you need to process your anger. It's okay to be angry. Don't repress them. Explore it. And that's what we're going to talk about next. And the second part is be angry at the right things. There are things that we need to be angry about. And that's why God, we see in the Bible, he says he's an angry God. And we go, oh, you see why God is angry? Because, people are angry too, and they made this God up. No. If you look at the things that God is truly angry about, you would be angry about the same thing. If you have created the world for everyone to get along, and people are being selfish and destroying peace, you would be absolutely angry about that. Okay? God gets really angry when people, for example, gossiping, God hates that. Why? Because that divides churches. That divides God's people. God gets angry about that. Do you know why God gets angry at our sins? Because it destroys us. Okay, you look at your kids, some of you guys who have kids, and they do wrong things. They do things that it's destroying them. Wouldn't you be angry? Okay? Your friends, let's say, comes, and somebody comes and bullies them. Would you not get angry? No, anger is a good thing. We just need to get angry at the right things. And also direct our anger in a correct way. Okay, so how do we actually do all this stuff? Let's go into it. Number one, there's two things I'm going to talk about. One thing I actually didn't write on the note, but let me just talk about it first. I think I forgot to put it in the notes. One thing we see here is he's really exploring his anger. He's bringing all of these things. He's actually, remember, the things that he's saying here, the things that he's saying, the things that we read, him talking about, hey, God, he's actually talking to God, right? He's not talking to other people. He's not gossiping, but he's actually coming to God and he's saying, God, these are the things that happened to me. Okay? And because of that, I am angry. Okay? That's basically what he's saying in his Psalms. And this is something that we really, really need to do. Okay? There's going to be times where you feel anger. There's going to be times where you feel annoyed. Why don't you slow down a little bit and just think, why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? Okay? I'll give you an example of this. A couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, Shauna, a couple of us, my parents, and Jane, we all went backpacking together. Okay? And I got really, really mad. Okay? Because what happened was, it was I think, was it Labor Day weekend? It was 3-day weekend. And because of that, there was a lot of backpackers who were there camping around. And we were walking a lot, and we were tired. And then we were trying to find a spot. And we thought we found a spot, but the other person basically came and in a very unnice way, said, you guys are stupid, you guys are way too close, what are you doing camping next to us, kind of this kind of things. And I was so angry, right? What a jerk. This is not you didn't pay for this, right? Do you own this property? I was actually saying those kind of things. But after that, we ended up moving because, my parents and they were like, oh, let's just go. But if I had it my way, I would have stayed. I would have been you know? But anyways, I got super angry. And I just remember like thinking about it, and I thought of like crazy things. Like 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 these kids, like that's nothing. Like I thought of like crazy things. Like things where you actually know that you'll be like, oh, you're not my pastor anymore. These kind of things, right? Like really, like, man, I think if I had a gun, it would have been bad, okay? Like I was so angry. But as I was, we were doing actually the emotion series. And so for me, this was really, really helpful because I really started exploring my anger. And I started to say like, dude, why are you so angry? Okay? Yeah, you have to walk a little bit more. Okay, did they inconvenience you? Absolutely. Did they say it in a very mean way? Absolutely. And those things I should be mad about. But really, like, I'm gonna like bring out a gun and like does my anger, like all like this much anger make sense in the situation? And it's like, no, yeah, this is upsetting. This is difficult. But I could walk a little bit more and just find a place. And I was just talking to God about this, and I was just thinking like, man, even small thing like this really shows what I'm made of. Right? Remember maybe a couple months ago, like we talked about how if you're so like sensitive to criticisms, it really shows you that there's a sore spot. Right? If somebody comes in and says like you're ugly and you get so affected by that, you realize it's because you're hurting. And I looked at that, I go, man, my identity, I feel like that person has wronged me. I started developing or discovering things about myself through these anger. And started to say, man, it only takes like this tiny little thing to just go way out of control. Is that all I got? So again, you see, anger, again, it's an emotion. It's not a bad thing, but we need to sometimes stop and explore these things. Okay, am I right to be this angry? No, it has limited my anger quite a bit. And a lot of the issues, I realized the reason why I was angry was because of my own issues and my own sins and my low self-esteem or my low sense of identity. Second thing, he actually brings it up. I'm going to skip this. One of the things he says is, remember, O Lord. So he talks about God. They're mocking us. This is what they did to us and our kids. But at the end, this is what he says. It's like he comes to God in front of a judge and he says, remember, O God, against the Ammonites, the day of Jerusalem. Now, whenever you see this phrase, remember, some of us were like, why do people say that? Or sometimes God actually says, I remember the promises I made to Abraham. He says these kind of things, okay? So when Hebrews use the word remember, it's not talking about like recollection, it's actually talking about action. Okay? So when God says something like, hey, I remember the promises of Abraham, he's basically saying, I'm going to take action because I remember the promises. I'm going to take action on the promise I made to Abraham. So what is he saying here? Remember, O Lord, he's basically saying, God, you take action. You see, this is one of the things that's very, very, very difficult for us, especially when we're in anger, to actually say, God, take action instead. This is very, very difficult. Because why? Anger, again, you want to protect something that has been harm to you, something good. So you want to protect it. But the problem is, a lot of times we don't have the power, we don't have the knowledge, and we don't have the right to judge others. Because sometimes, like I said, like they told me to move like my camping ground, and I wanted to like kill them. Like, that's stupid. Okay? That's where you go, you pastor at Sacramento Church killed. Like you look at those kind of news and you're like, why would you do that? But again, that's what anger does. Right? Diffused in a wrong way, this is what anger does. You look at a lot of the bitterness, a lot of the anger we have, a lot of times, again, it's overblown. But it's really hard for us to see that. Why? Because it hurts me. So instead, what does he do? He has every right to hate the Babylonians. He has every right to come to God and says, give me all the power so I can slay all of them. But instead, he says, God, you take action. Why? Because God, you have the power, okay, to actually, okay, vindicate the injustice that has been done in my life. God, you actually have the overarching knowledge, okay, where you know everything, where you can correctly judge. And in the end, God, you have actually the right to judge because you are going to be the judge. Do you guys know that? Do you guys know that at the end of our lives, whether we like it or not, whether we go, God doesn't, whether we like it or not, okay, we're going to stand in front of a judge at the end of our lives. And we're not going to be like, God, why did you do this and this and this? But actually, it's going to be God who's saying, okay, make an account for your life. And so what is he doing here? He's actually coming in front of God and he's limiting his anger. Again, anger is a good thing. We need to express it to God, but we also need to know, okay, there's a higher judge. And we come in front of that judge and we go, God, there's something, things that injustice has been done to me. Okay? But there's times where, there's sometimes if there is an evil thing, I need to step up. Okay? I need to make this right. But there are certain things where there's nothing I can do, and I just need to leave it up to God. Now, last part. Praying our anger. Okay? How do we actually do this? Or the question it says here, what gives us the power to limit our angers or deal with our anger in a right way? There's one thing that the psalmist actually, he wasn't able to see, but something that we as Christians were able to see. You see how Psalm 137, he's saying this is injustice. You see the bigger country flexing his muscles and coming and destroying all of us, pillaging us, taking advantage of us, right? Killing our kids. God, where is justice? What's going on? But you see, this author of Psalm 137 didn't hear the answer that we actually get to see all the time, which is God actually responded to Psalm 137. He actually says, do you want to see injustice? Look at Jesus. Do you want to see someone being dashed to the stones? Look at Jesus. Okay. Jesus is the ultimate victim against injustice in this world. He voluntarily chooses, whereas Psalm 137, they have no choice. Jesus voluntarily chooses to lay down his life and to be dashed and to be killed. Why? Because we know that because of sin, okay, all of us, we all deserve death. You see? This is all talking about justice. If we're talking about justice, then we know that we all messed up at one point in our lives. And we stand in front of that judge, and we cannot say that we're righteous or that we're good. But you see, Jesus is actually saying, hey, there has been injustice that has occurred to my son. And because of that, now there's life and there's salvation for you. So when you see injustice, look at my son. Look at what he's going through. When you have hard time forgiving other people, look at Jesus. He forgave you, even though you deserve none of this forgiveness. Limit your anger, okay, and direct it towards good. Why? Because that's exactly what Jesus did. You see, Jesus could have said, look at all these people. I have created this world for good, but everybody's living in their own selfish way, saying, mine, 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 mine. And I see incredible injustice. But instead, all right, instead of killing all of us or destroying all of us and starting over, what does he do? he tries to point his anger towards the problem. But in the end, we see that that anger, it goes all to Jesus instead of us. And because of that, there's life. There's eternal life, if we believe that. For us, holding on to anger is very, very easy, right? We want to we want to be in power, or we want to avoid conflicts. So there's a lot of different ways we deal with anger. But you guys know, I know, it's not working. It hasn't worked. Either we explode on the inside, we explode on the outside. Why don't you try a third way? Why don't you try this? Whenever you are getting angry, when you are getting upset, to pause, to slow down, to come before God, and to know that He's the righteous judge, but to ultimately know that He has forgiven you as well. Let's go into time of reflection.